Hello and welcome back, everybody, to the Tech Intelligence conference here with the Telegraph. I hope you've enjoyed the networking session there, all had a chance to chat to each other. I hope you've had a chance to drop in on Burdenberg's legal clinic. They're going to be here today and tomorrow. So if you hadn't had a chance yet, go and do that. It's great. Networking is obviously great, but even better is the chance to talk to someone who really has an insight into what has been going on during this pandemic to get stuff to the nation, to keep us all going in the most basic and elemental way, and how that could be expanded to run the world in future. I am talking about none other than Ocado. Yes, Ocado. The people who deliver you food, that delicious grub comes to your door, seems like it's just a bloke in a van, but actually there's an astonishing robotic engineering marvel behind it, utilizing the very cutting edge of technology, as I said, robotics, but also artificial intelligence, warehouses that will make, if you could see them, would blow your mind. We're going to have someone who can talk us through that, who will blow your mind. It's Paul Clarke. He's the Chief Technology Officer at Ocado. He's going to tell us all about it, about Ocado's pandemic, how they managed to do it, and what their experiences could tell the future of retail and supply chains in future. This will be fascinating. Paul, where are you? Are you here?
I am indeed. Hello.
Paul, fascinating. Thanks so much. It's great to see you. It's great to have you along. Now, I know that this is going to be interesting because I know a little bit about Ocado and I know a little bit of what goes on in those warehouses. And it's not just what we think. It's not people picking up endless bunches of bananas and putting them in plastic bags to hand to a bloke in a van to drive them to your door. You have an extraordinary supply chain, an extraordinary logistics marvel, which allows you to get groceries to people's doors. So first of all, just tell us a little bit about the demand, the stresses that have been placed on that supply chain in the last 9 months, the extra traffic, and how you've had to respond to it.
So obviously our story starts at the point at which goods arrive at our highly automated warehouses. So obviously upstream of that is the whole kind of supply chain that feeds the food system, which is not part of our world. But we rely on it, obviously. And our story starts with taking goods in from many different suppliers and then putting it away into automated storage using swarms of thousands of robots to do that, and then automating the assembly of customer orders that flow in through our mobile app and web shop. And that is a very automated process. There are still plenty of people involved in it, but we're continually finding new ways to automate different parts of that process. And then when the orders are assembled, they head off in vans using our own delivery fleet, and they arrive at our customers' kitchen tables in 1 hour delivery slots. So it's like a food pipe that extends, from our warehouses right the way to our customers' kitchen tables.
Now you're talking about swarms of robots. I mean, that sounds tremendously exciting. And someone once described an Ocado warehouse to me as like a 3D chessboard. It's a sort of lattice, but it extends upwards as well. And you have robots trundling across this lattice, picking stuff up and depositing them in the right bags and containers to be shipped off. Is that approximately right still?
Yes, it is. I mean, there are different, robots and indeed people that are involved in that process. So, yeah, you're right. That kind of 3D storage cube, if you like, or hive as we call it, is where a lot of the action happens. That's where we can store 50,000 different products and then retrieve them, just in time to pack in exactly the right sequence into our customers' orders, which are, typically sort of 40 to 50 items, so more in the pandemic, and those robots are now being assisted by other kinds of robots that are starting to do the actual picking and packing of the items into the carrier bags that, as you rightly say, then go out and arrive, at our customers' doorsteps.
Because it's not easy, are you? Some parts of the warehouse presumably have to be refrigerated for meat, and then you've got bleach as well. So, I mean, how do you stop bleachy lamb chops?
So you're quite right. I mean, that whole process of not only packing the right items into the order, but doing it in exactly the right sequence, making sure that the items that should be at the bottom, like maybe the soap powder, goes there, and then the eggs and the soft fruit go on top, and that things like bleach, special instructions come up to actually say, oh, this is an item that might be hazardous, so it should be overwrapped in another plastic bag, and we're, if you like, we're solving that challenge of what you should pack in what order into which bags. That's one of many examples of where machine learning plays an essential role to make that whole process accurate, scalable, and involving as few human decisions as possible. And it's just one example of many applications of AI and machine learning across our end-to-end platforms that are fundamental to that process of doing online grocery scalably, sustainably, and profitably, because it's a very complex business, online grocery. You're dealing with an average item price of £2, which means that you've got about 60 pence to go from getting the products in to getting them to the customer's kitchen table. Very different from if you were doing flat screen TVs, where although you might have similar margins, you've got a lot more money to spend on that end-to-end process. So that's why our vision right from day one was how to do that using a huge amount of technology and automation. And that's what we built for ourselves. And now that's the platform, the Ocado Smart platform, which we're selling around the world to some of the largest and most innovative retailers on the planet.
And I want to come on to that in a bit, but essentially what you're saying is we've got wafer thin margins in the grocery business. It has to be a largely tech automated supply chain to keep costs down, to make it viable commercially. So just give us a sense of how many orders you can process in what kind of time through one of your warehouses, and how many people might actually be in that warehouse.
So one of the great advantages of the technology that we've now built allows us to, pick, a 50 item customer order in about 5 minutes. And that means that, we can get it, out of the building, perhaps in, maybe 15 minutes. And that's really important because the journey that everybody is on is now towards immediacy. Everybody wants things at very short notice. And, that's part of our model, is how, solving that part of the challenge. And then another part is how do you put these warehouses closer to the customer, which also solves the challenge of driving less far, which is good as part from the point of view of that immediacy question, but it's also really important, from a sustainability point of view. So you've got to solve many different challenges if you want to allow people, as we now are doing, to order perhaps and get their order within an hour or even within 20 minutes, with a still a very sizable range as part of that. And in terms of the number of people, I mean, that varies, over time, as we scale up warehouses. I mean, one of our newer warehouses, across the sort of 3 shifts, we probably have, I don't know, maybe 300 or 400 people there at any one time. There's still lots of processes that involve human effort, but we're constantly taking layers off that onion, if you like. We're constantly looking at what's the next thing that we will automate, and when that happens, we move people around and we continue to grow.
And are people generally involved in looking after the robots, or do robots look after the robots?
That's a great question. At the moment, human engineers look after the robots, and that will continue. But as we build, warehouses around the world, and we've got about, 40 of them to build over the next 4 years around the world for our customers, our platform customers, we're always looking at how to make what we do scalable, or as I like to put it, and this is very much the focus of my division, the Office of the CTO, is what I would call scalability by design, rather. Sorry, i.e., it's focusing not on the velocity but on the acceleration. It's looking ahead and saying, what are the future problems that might, impact us in terms of scalability. And one of those is definitely, the role that robots play in looking after other robots. So, that's on a long list of things that I and others are focused on, to anticipate, if you like, future opportunities and solve future challenges. Once again, using this same kind of blend, this same cauldron of disruptive ingredients, whether it be, the Internet of Things, robotics or smart machines, artificial intelligence and machine learning, simulations, mathematical models, digital twins for those people who know what that is, and cloud technology. That's what we cook with, and we come up with rich innovational recipes for building solutions from those kind of technology.
Now, I've written the odd piece about cyborgs, which I'm sure people know are sort of part machine, part person. We've all seen sci-fi films, but when I research pieces about people who've lost limbs, say, and are looking for replacements, it always comes back to the hand and to how you grab things. And people always tell me that the hand is a marvel. It's brilliant at doing many, many things. It's not the strongest or the most flexible or the most accurate, but it can do everything pretty well. And so, when we're unpacking the Ocado delivery, we just need one pair of hands, because we can feel, we've got pressure sensors, we can grab, we can unscrew, we can open the fridge door, put things in. But robots can't approximate the ingenuity of the human hand yet, can they? So tell me how close you are, and all the different kind of gizmos and amazing grabbers that you've had to develop to deal with tins and milk bottles and packs of spaghetti and bleach and lamb chops.
Well, you've described it beautifully there, Harry. I mean, I think exactly right. Evolution has done an extraordinary job, at coming up with an amazing way that we take for granted. And I think one of the interesting things is that, you and I and everybody else on this call, since babies, we've been learning, how to interact with the physical world. We've been learning how to pick things up. And in many cases, nobody taught us. We didn't sit down with lessons on, how do you pick up an apple? We either observed other people doing it, or we tried and perhaps failed. And then over time, we learnt by doing. And exactly the same kind of process is needed to teach robots how, or smart machines, how to pick things up, how to pack them, how to learn the strategies ahead of time. So when they're presented with a particular problem, they can take the right kind of strategy off the shelf and say, "Oh yes, I know that problem. I know how to solve that," and just respond very quickly. And you do that, as I say, either by allowing them to be taught by humans, or to learn within simulated environments where they can kind of try things out. And then the next stage is you need kind of playpens, if you like, what we call living labs, where you let them loose, but in a safe way, a bit like putting the wheels on a stabilizers on a bicycle when a child is learning to cycle. It keeps them safe, but then over time you can start taking them off, and off they go. So that,
and as you go, are there things which you're finding, this is a hard problem? The robots are just baffled by shiny boxes or whatever it might be.
Yeah, and I think, once again, going back to the human analogy of how smart machines learn, your children, even when they're grown up and leave home, they come across problems that they've not had to solve before, and often they'll come back to their parents and say, "Oh, I need a bit of advice on this," and the robotic equivalent of that is the role that teleoperation and haptics, which is how do you remotely have that sense of feel that you mentioned, is a way for humans to step back into the loop when a robot is confront something that it hasn't solved before, and to help it over that challenge. And that could be learning to grasp something that it's never grasped before and being taught how to do that. Or for other kinds of smart machines, it could be a cleaning robot within a hospital that gets itself into a corner but gets stuck, and needs someone to sort of show it how to get out of that. So there's lots of examples on this journey between manual and autonomy. It's not a binary process that you flip, but it's a gradual process. But coming back to that question you were asking about hands, because I think it's a really important one, is we've done a lot of work with developing new kinds of grippers. One of the highly successful Horizon 20 projects called Soma was focused on this, and it was all about creating kinds of grippers that mimic human hands with sensors and things like that, as you rightly said, because they are remarkably good at being able to pick many different items. And when we pick our 50,000 different items, we don't want 30,000 different kinds of grippers to do that. We want to minimize the amount of different types of grippers, or end effectors as we call them, that those robots will need to use to deal with that diverse picking and packing challenge. So that's a core part of our robotics research focus, along with many other streams that we're working on. And I think one of the things that's got us to where we are is being very, very self-sufficient. All of that research is happening in-house, and so we that self-sufficiency is something that's going to continue as we go forwards.
So you're denying that there's going to be almost complete automation in warehouses in future, or that huge numbers of logistics roles are going to be carried out by machines, not people, in future?
No, I'm definitely not denying that. I mean, I think undoubtedly that's the kind of the journey that we and others are on, which is to continue to add automation on that end-to-end process. What's interesting though is the warehouses that we're building now will continue to have people in them. We may automate additional elements of them, and I'm sure we will, but a warehouse that is truly lights out, if you like, will look quite different, and that's another research project that we and I'm sure many other people around the world are actively involved in, because that's one of the kind of the holy grails, if you like, which is how to drive greater efficiency. And this is not a choice. I mean, the fact is, you can't play King Canute here. The technological tide is coming in fast around the world, and there are many companies working on these challenges. And if we are to remain competitive as a business, and indeed if the UK is to remain competitive as a nation, we really do have to embrace these technologies. And then,
for jobs, Paul, I mean, people will be watching this and going, but I work there, that's my job, what's happening? Are you confident that other forms of jobs, employment, will take the place of all the redundancy that this wave of automation is going to create?
Well, speaking in terms of our business, I mean, we've been at this for 20 years, and we've constantly been on this drive towards automation. But at the same time, our headcount has just grown. Wherever we build a new warehouse, we're a significant employer of people. And as I've just said, the warehouses we're building now still have, despite being highly automated, they still have a significant number of people, working within them. It's very different from, say, an oil refinery that is almost fully automated. And that's as much because the technologies, to solve all these different kinds of challenges aren't, have not reached the level of maturity. I mean, if you think about, autonomous delivery vehicles, that's a area we're very interested in. But once again, there's a long way to go with that. So it's a research project at the moment.
But you're not a pessimist. You don't fear a sort of a future of enormous joblessness.
No, I think what's really, really important here is what we do to anticipate the unintended consequences, if you like, of greater, automation. And that's why, I speak a lot publicly about the need of for radical educational reform. I speak about the importance of lifelong learning, for reskilling and top-up learning, and that's across the board. For some of our most technical and skilled roles in areas like AI and robotics, those technologies don't stand still. So, top-up learning there is just as important, but it's important, across the jobs and skills spectrum. And I think the way in which we build these smart machines to work collaboratively with humans, and the way in which we build AI and machine learning systems to work collaboratively, whether it be helping people make less mistakes or spending less time doing the things that they don't enjoy doing, keeping them safer in their roles. This is really important, but it's also important, to solve other big problems, because although this pandemic has been horrendous, I would argue it's probably just a warm-up act for what we have ahead with climate change and net zero and sustainable development goals. And so I think using these technologies, harnessing these technologies to help us solve some of those big problems, data, modeling, smart machines, and AI, these are the kind of things we're going to need to solve these very big challenges ahead. So we need to be learning the lessons now about how to deploy them.
Paul, I've run away with myself because it's been so fascinating. We've got 2 minutes left and I want to ask you 2 questions. So here they are. Here's the first one. Ocado as a business, people think of it as a grocery. Of course, it's not. What you're describing is a tech business. It's AI, it's robotics, and you're rolling it out that across the world. Can Ocado become a great global champion of, because when I think about what you do, I also think, hang on, Amazon does lots of this stuff, logistics. I mean, you've got the world's biggest behemoth opposite you. That's quite a title fight to have. Can you go toe-to-toe? Can you win? Can you become a global champion?
Well, I believe that's the journey that we're very definitely on. I mean, despite what a lot of people might have said about us in the past, I think we've just kept going. We've had a very clear vision. That vision has evolved over time, and I think we have shown that if you get it right, you can build solutions that are world leading, even though you might be doing them with probably a fraction of the budget that some other competitors around the world have. And I think there's a really important lesson there, for the UK, because we have to look for ways to punch above our weight as a nation, because we're competing with some countries that have bigger budgets and more data and more resources. So I think there's an analog there, an interesting analog there for what the UK needs to do.
Final question, 1 minute to go. I know you can do it. You've been brilliant. Ocado has moved from being a private business, go ahead, make as much profit as you can, to almost becoming part of national infrastructure, almost like a utility during this pandemic. Has that reset the way you think? Do you expect greater scrutiny, greater regulation as tech companies like your own become ingrained in everyday life? We don't think of you as a water company or an electricity company, but we might do in future. Does that bring a whole load of different challenges? Big question, short time. Sorry, Paul.
Okay. So I think what we're building has applications in many other areas, and obviously that's been a part of the focus of my division to explore those. And I think weaving the fabric of a smart, prosperous, sustainable, scalable, and resilient country is a mission that we need to be on. And indeed, it's why I sit on quite a lot of government advisory boards to try and help with that thought leadership. So I think that's a really important question for us as a country, and not just Ocado. And I think certainly a lot of, Ocado is a microcosm of that. And I think being a responsible corporate citizen as well as a highly successful commercial organization is an important part of the picture.
So you don't think the government's going to come back and say, no, you can't put those lamb chop prices up, because actually you're a national service now. So, we're going to, there's going to be price controls, the regulator's going to sort of do all this kind of stuff with you?
I don't believe so, but that's not a question just for Ocado. That's a question for the whole retail industry, because you still remember that although we may be large online, we're still a relatively small player in the globe, in the UK, let alone the global food market. So I think that's a much wider question for a much wider set of stakeholders.
True enough. Paul, it's been such a pleasure to speak to you. It's always fascinating. I always love hearing the nuts and bolts about what goes on behind the scenes, because it is absolutely breathtaking. We wish you all the best to help transform Ocado into a global player, which this country so richly wants and maybe deserves. But go for it. Fascinating insight there to what gets your shopping to your front door from Chief Technology Officer Paul Clarke of Ocado.